Fanatics also reported a 100% increase in sales for WNBA specific merchandise. It started with Caitlin Clark. And so now that we know all of this, and we've known that for months, now we get to turn around and look and see what exactly is it that the league will do knowing that she's out for the next 2 weeks. I'm not saying I know for sure what's going to happen, but I have an idea.
The WNBA allowed this to occur just when you thought they were finally coming to terms with things and were prepared to follow Caitlin Clark's golden wave all the way to the promised land of mainstream significance and financial success. I'm referring about the injury that has every basketball fan, sports expert, and yes, even Stephen Smith going completely crazy.
Fortunately, though, the celebration in the WNBA, it was cut short yesterday afternoon as WNBA players learned the harsh lesson, be careful what you wish for. Headline at the New York Post. Caitlin Clark sidelined with Indiana Felines announcing shock injury. Keyword, shock. This injury was shocking, but not for reasons that you may
Caitlin Clark, the individual who transformed women's basketball from a specialized sport that you're sitting on the sidelines with a left quad injury, the basketball-mad relative watches into an appointment television that has folks canceling dinner reservations. At least 2 weeks, they say. The WNBA has spent the last 2 weeks attempting to act as though losing their biggest star, their golden goose, and their actual ratings magnet won't cause their viewership figures to plummet like a house of cards during a hurricane.
Everybody was moving Caitlin Clark games to bigger facilities because everyone was selling tickets. There were ratings. It was a ratings bonanza. Now with Caitlin Clark not playing, what do? Well, when you change your situs, guess what? You can't change it back.
Yep.
All
the tickets are literally half the price, and there are entire sections of the stadium that have not sold any tickets.
And who is the first to lose their mind over this? Who was the first to point that out? The madness of the circumstance. It was none other than Stephen A. Smith, who has been standing up for Caitlin Clark since the beginning, when half of the WNBA establishment was behaving as though she had inadvertently stumbled into their league as a basketball tourist.
Clark, Indiana led the league in attendance both at home and on the road. The Fever averaged 17,035 fans at home and over 15,000 on the road. 4 teams moved home games to bigger arenas when Indiana came to town to accommodate more fans. That's about Caitlin Clark. How do we know this? Attendance for the entire league was up nearly 50% last year. According to data from across the timeline, and Indiana led all teams with an average attendance of 17,035. That was up 319% from the year earlier.
Stephen didn't limit his remarks to this injury. He completely went nuclear. And to be honest, it's about time someone did, because Stephen is out here stating facts that would make a mathematician cry with delight, while everyone else is skirting the obvious, trying to be politically correct and acting as though Caitlin Clark isn't actually carrying this league on her back. We'll discover. When asked how large of a blow Clark's injury is to the WNBA, Stephen responded, "We don't know yet." However, I'm going to be incredibly curious to watch how this affects the WNBA's numbers, because if there is a sharp decline for any reason, then everyone must take a back seat.
We'll find out. We don't know yet, but I'm going to be really, really interested in seeing, Molly, what kind of effect this has on the WNBA's ratings, because if for some reason there is a precipitous drop-off, then everybody needs to stand down and recognize the fact that the speculation or the assertions and assumptions about her being the golden goose is validated.
Subscribe if you're enjoying it. You lovely logical genius, Stephen. Since that's precisely what will occur, won't it? The man is essentially sitting there with a stopwatch, prepared to record the very moment the WNBA acknowledges that they have been undervaluing their most important asset. It's like listening to someone whine about being broke while ignoring a pot of wealth. Stephen is the one shouting, "The gold is right there," as he stands there. Let's take a moment to discuss numbers, since it seems like certain WNBA front office staff members need a reality check and a calculator. This season, 1.178 million people have watched games with Caitlin Clark on average. 394,000 viewers for games without her. It's more than just a distinction. That 199% gap is so large that a freight train could pass through it. The fact that Clark's games attract 3 times as many viewers as those without her puts this into context, something even the most mathematically impaired sports executive might comprehend. 3 times.
Became the first rookie with at least 25 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds in a playoff game. That was Caitlin Clark. Became the 4th different rookie to play all 40 minutes in a playoff game. That was her. I'm looking at other things. 6 different league television partners. This is last year. This is last season, because this is Caitlin Clark that we're talking about. 6 different league television partners set viewership records that year, her rookie year, for its highest viewed WNBA game. Do you know every one of those games included the Indiana Fever?
Folks, this is when things get very hot. Stephen Smith's anger isn't limited to the harm. He has spent months preparing for this moment. This individual has witnessed the WNBA stumbling over itself as they attempt to manage its brightest star. He has witnessed great players like Cheryl Swoops behaving more like Clark was an intruder than the league's much-needed salvation. He has witnessed the leadership of the league, including Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, respond ambivalently when they ought to have been organizing ticker tape parades. Stephen is basically shouting, "I told you so," in the most dramatic manner imaginable now that Clark is hurt. Additionally, acknowledge that the rumors, claims, and presumptions regarding her being the golden goose have been confirmed, Stephen said. And you know that you ride that wave if it occurs. All boats rise with the tide. And if her absence for the next 2 weeks due to that quad issue is further proof that this is the magnetic traction that attracts fans to the WNBA, then everyone must embrace, get up, and ride that wave. To put it another way, the WNBA's ratings are on the verge of collapsing, and Stephen will use those figures as a sledgehammer to beat down anyone who has been too arrogant or obstinate to acknowledge what has been clear from the beginning.
Lifts all boats. And if this is the magnetic traction that draws viewers to the WNBA, and her absence over the next 2 weeks due to that quad strain is providing further evidence of that, then everybody needs to accept it, stand down, and ride that wave. I'm going to be really interested in seeing how the ratings are going to look without her over the next 2 weeks. Let's make sure we come back and ask me this exact same question after she's been gone for those 2 weeks.
Let's take a moment to go back in time and discuss how we arrived at this point. Caitlin Clark joined the WNBA and quickly rose to economic stimulus package for one woman. The most watched WNBA game on ESPN platforms ever was the season opener between Clark's Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky, which drew 2.7 million viewers on ABC. Not only is that figure astounding, but it's almost remarkable for a league that has spent more than 20 years struggling to remain relevant. Here's the worst part, though, that we got this instead of the WNBA executives swooning and praising whichever basketball gods gave them this present. Mediocre news releases and uninspired postings on social media, they seemed ashamed of their own accomplishments, too afraid to acknowledge that a single player might have such a significant impact. This was witnessed in real time by Stephen A. Smith, who had been gradually building to a raging outburst of annoyance. While some players and commentators pretended that Clark didn't deserve the spotlight, he has seen Clark shatter viewing records, crowd venues, and ultimately bring the WNBA into the public eye.
What she brings to the table. But people wanted to hate because why? You had a bunch of players in this league that watched this young white girl come along and take the league by storm, and they resented it because they saw the marketing prowess that she had. They ignored the fact that you got chartered flights because of this girl. They ignored the fact that ratings were going through the roof because of this girl. Instead, they resented it because they said, yo, we were doing stuff long before Caitlin Clark got here, and y'all wasn't paying attention then. But now, the young white girl comes along, and y'all want to sit up there and shower all of this praise and all of this attention that was earned before she ever came along. The resentment is understandable, but it's not about Caitlin Clark. It's about what she represents. My point is, grow.
The man has been standing up for Clark against those who appear more concerned with instead of applauding the rising tide that was lifting all boats. They chose to defend their own egos. Steven was there calling it out when former WNBA players began making disparaging remarks and behaving resentfully rather than appreciative. Steven made reference to Clark's outspoken detractors when he added, "They act like there isn't or hasn't been legitimate resentment." However, nobody is duped here. And since Clark isn't simply missing any previous games, we can now watch Steven's forecast come to life in real time. She is missing big-name matches that were meant to be the stuff of television dreams. Gone is the much-awaited duel with the Chicago Sky and Angel Reese. There were several nationally broadcast games that the networks were hoping would draw viewers. Poof. When you give it some serious thought, the financial ramifications are astounding. In addition to losing their top player, the Indiana Fever are also losing their main source of income. Clark is more than simply the team's top scorer and backup captain. People literally buy tickets, watch television, and buy stuff because of her and her absence. The Fever lose their status as must-see TV and become simply another WNBA club that is difficult for casual fans to identify from a roster.
I think Stephen A is 100% correct on this. At the end of the day, you already see people actually saying, hey, I'm not watching for 2 weeks. I'm not tuning in for 2 weeks. And it's really bad news for the Mystics and the Sky because both of those teams moved those games to big arenas. So it's like now that she's not playing, what is that attendance going to look like? The viewership, right? The viewership is going to plummet. I already know. Because majority of the people that's watching the Indiana Fever wants to see Caitlin Clark. And sad to say it, a lot of them only want to see Caitlin Clark. They don't really care about the entire...
However, this is where Steven's annoyance truly erupts. All of this could have been avoided, not the actual injury. Sports injuries can occur, but the league's total inability to safeguard and value their most important asset is what makes it so. Clark has taken hits that would make an NFL linebacker win during her rookie season and into the upcoming one. Egregious infractions, risky maneuvers, and careless targeting. What action did the WNBA take? They behave as though it was merely a gaming element. Like the rest of us, Steven has likely been shouting at his TV while watching this happen. This player is genuinely changing the league's fortunes. Additionally, the WNBA allowed opponents to treat her like a punching bag rather of embracing her and treating her like the valuable asset that she is on a corporate level. It is malpractice. Steven is aware that the numbers don't lie. Even though Clark lost against the New York Liberty in her last game prior to the injury, it was still the second most watched WNBA game on CBS, drawing 2.22 million viewers. Clark was putting up numbers that most WNBA games could only hope to match, even in a tight loss.
The Fever and the Liberty, peaking at 3.2 million viewers. 3.2. And again, second most viewed game on CBS ever. I have no idea what the most viewed game.
Now picture the same periods of time without Clark. Consider attempting to explain to television CEOs for the recent 200% decline in ratings. Imagine attempting to persuade sponsors that the WNBA is still worth their money when their main attraction is wearing street clothes and sitting on the bench. Steven doesn't need to think about it. With the joy of a guy who has been validated in every statement he has made for months, he will record every agonizing rating point decline as he watches it happen. However, this is the extremely annoying aspect that has Steven furious. If the WNBA had simply listened, this could have been prevented. Instead of attempting to minimize Clark's influence, they might have shielded her more effectively, actively marketed her, and recognized the contributions she was making. They could have also stopped pretending that Clark's success was a coincidental event. There is more to the Clark impact than just individual games. It concerns the whole women's basketball ecology. People who had never watched the WNBA before suddenly get interested when she plays. Those same individuals will tune out before you can say quad strain when she is hurt. Additionally, it will be almost impossible to get them back once they are gone.
You cannot make this up. When she's not playing, ticket prices, merchandise sales plummet. Viewership declines when she is not suited up in uniform. The numbers do not lie, guys. Caitlin Clark is the biggest box office attraction in the WNBA, period. Facts over.
It seems that the WNBA leadership doesn't share Steven's understanding of this. He has a broad perspective. Clark is more than a mere athlete. She is a sensation. She serves as a link between the WNBA's possible future success and its previous setbacks. The league is now stranded on the brink of irrelevance, as that bridge is currently closed for maintenance. The most frustrating thing is that all of this was expected. You safeguard that investment when a player generates viewership comparable to NBA games, and when one person completely transforms the discourse surrounding women's basketball. You don't let opponents to commit blatant fouls, hack, and grab without facing harsh repercussions. You do not handle your golden goose in the same manner as other players. However, the WNBA did just that. And now Steven is sitting there saying, "I told you so," which will reverberate for weeks because he will be the first to point out that this was completely predictable and avoidable when the viewership figures for games without Clark plummet back to their pre-Clark levels. The story is already being told by the fan response. Millions of fans who first took an interest in the WNBA because of Clark are already discussing boycotting games until she comes back. Fans are expressing on social media that they will not watch subpar basketball without the player who initially sparked their interest in the league.
I mean, with Caitlin Clark being out of the picture, you know what's already happened in the WNBA? Yeah, that's right. Those ticket prices went way down. And you would think most of the ladies in the league would want to wish Caitlin a very speedy and successful recovery, because without her in that league, it's going back to where it was before she even got drafted to the NBA.
Can you really blame them, too? If you were first drawn to the show as a casual fan because Caitlin Clark, why would you stay to watch games that feel like a return to black and white TV after seeing color for the first time on the game appointment television? Steven witnesses all of this. Additionally, you can almost hear him rehearsing his voice for the most famous "I told you so" in sports media history, because there are multiple injured players involved. This is about a league that somehow let it get away with it despite having lightning in a bottle. In the next weeks, everything Steven has said regarding Caitlin Clark's worth to the WNBA will be put to the test. And with all of the available data, all of the recorded ratings, every crowded arena, and every sold-out ticket, Steven is going to be shown to be more correct than he likely even wants to be, because the WNBA will have to face a reality that Stephen A. Smith has been yelling about for months when the dust settles and the data are in. They took her for granted even though she was their rescuer. They can now discover what life is like without all